Hello, UK Crime Book Club. And congratulations, Mr. Craven.
Thank you very much.
Successful release of another fantastic book.
Thank you.
People will be surprised to see me actually with an actual glass and only hide it in a mug, but it's not alcohol. So that'd be fancy and use a glass like a grown-up. This will be what goes all down me, won't it? I shouldn't have jinxed myself. Anyway.
Well, this is alcohol. This is Brewdog, because Joe Singleton normally asks if he's watching. But it is alcohol, Joe.
Some people have already signed in and started watching. So give us a little taster of Dead Ground.
Read it.
It's up to you. You can either tell us a bit of what
I'll tell you about it, because I read too fast. Well, Dead Ground, it's the fourth Poe book. I suppose the four and a half if you count the short stories, which I actually tend to forget because I don't have any physical copies of them. I do have the Spanish version. Actually, the Spanish printed them out and put them in a little paperback. So it follows on from the events of the creator, which for those of you who have read will know that it ended particularly bad for one of the members of the teams. So I have had to work that into the narrative without actually spoiling the creator for anyone who uses Dead Ground as the entry point to the series. But basically, this is a Poe and Tilly story, and it starts with the sort of what would. It might appear to be the culmination of something that started in Black Summer, and that was Poe's shepherd's hut being threatened by the council, and he's actually in court. That's how the book actually starts, with a bank robbery where everyone's wearing James Bond masks, but then it moves into Poe in court, and Poe uses Tilly as his legal advice, and of course Tilly wipes the floor with the council solicitor, and the judge is just about to rule in their favour when two shadowy people come in and stop the court case and drag Poe away because he's needed to lead a multi-agency team, which includes a member of the FBI, a couple of members of MI5, because one of the VIP pilots, helicopter pilots flying in people to and from a trade summit that is due to take place in Cumbria, has been found murdered in a Carlisle brothel. So that's the sort of first few pages. So you don't need to read them. You can just skip to about chapter 10 if you can't be bothered to read it.
No, you cannot skip a single word of it.
Well, you'll miss Poe explain to the judge that he doesn't need a solicitor because Tilly's as clever as Stephen Hawking's wheelchair.
I did like that. I do like the humour all the way through. And do you know, we were just saying before we went live that a lot of the time we just get Facebook user. Most people have given permission so we can see the names, which is good.
Anya, hi Anya.
Hi Anya, hi Donna.
Lucy's there, obviously. Joe.
Let's have a look. I know Lucy's here. Looking who that one is, and I can't see who it is that says hi all, but hello. Might be. Oh, Leslie wants you to read a bit. Shall we save that for towards the end?
Yeah.
Give them a little taste of it all. Anya said, Brewdog's amazing. They have fantastic environmental campaigns.
Yeah, that's why I drink. That's the only reason I drink beer is to plant a tree for every pint I have, or something stupid like that. But yeah, they are. Joanne, my wife, bought me shares in Brewdog for my birthday. So
nice.
I'm an equity punk now. Apparently, if you get a Brewdog tattoo, you can get 20% off in bars. But I mean that's extreme, isn't it?
I don't know. I suppose it depends how much you drink.
Well, yeah, I suppose, yeah. You have to be really keen on. I don't know. I'm not getting a Brewdog tattoo. I don't care how drunk I get.
Yeah, we'll see. Hi, Lucy. Lucy's been checking in on me today because she knew I was nervous.
Right.
I think a bit of nerves is good, though. Do you still get nervous before you do stuff?
Yeah, I did an event on Tuesday. Actually, I've done events all week, like I was saying. The event on Tuesday, I did have a few nerves, actually. It was the reading party with William Shaw, where a bunch of people read the book. And Sarah Paretsky, had asked to join. I was like, so pressed. She's like one of the ones who does the 8 o'clock spotlight thing at Harrogate. I mean, Harrogate, she's a massive author. So I got a bit butterfly about then. And then I did an event on Wednesday with Bookends, my local bookshop. And I was saying beforehand, if I don't get a little bit nervous energy, I suppose it's probably time to ask myself why, because it's the same when I'm writing a book. If I don't get nervous when it comes out, because you're wondering how people are going to react to it, or if you're wondering if when you hit the blank page whether the muse is going to be there again, then it's time to maybe reevaluate. And I was talking about the Poem Tilly series. When I don't find it fun to write, it'll be time to stop and write something else. I'm loving it at the minute. Like I said, I've written the next 2, so I mean, I'm not stopping anytime soon.
So you do write. So the one that's just come out, Dead Ground, was written 2 years ago. Is that right?
Yeah, I sent it to my agent in. It was the night of the Daggers. The Daggers was in October 19, I think, when I won the gold, and I was saying, sort of having a laugh, I was brought back down to earth with a bump the day after, because my agent said, you need a little bit of work to do on Dead Ground. It's not ready to send yet. So that means I must have started writing it in 2018. Because the one, I mean, I'm contracted, they tell me when I've got to deliver it by, and it tends to be 18 months in advance of publication, which is it's fine, because I'm ahead. I've actually bought myself a year, because when I was still in probation, I tended to write during my lunch break. It was either that or just go to Greg's and just buy 10 pasties, and I thought, well, I can do that 4 days of the week, but on the 5th day of the week, I'm going to eat an apple and write. So I did, and I wrote this sort of standalone thriller. This is before Poe even existed. And it's set in the States. And during lockdown, the first lockdown, my editor must have had nothing to read. So she emailed me and said, have you got anything at all I've not read that you've written? So I sent her this standalone, and she bought it. So that's out in 2023, I think, which means I've actually bought myself a year of actually doing nothing at all, because the book I would have had to write has already been written. So I've got 3 books in the pipeline that are due to come out. So
it's just a big bang somewhere. I don't know what it was, but nobody's screaming, so I think I'm good. T says hello to us both. Hi, T.
Hello.
Joe wants to know, taking into account all the different books in different languages, which is your favourite cover? Is that a bit like asking favourite child?
No, not really, because a lot of the covers, I'll just pick you up.
You're going to give us the tour.
I don't know if you can see where we are. I can't see, but a lot of the covers are sort of rip-off, not rip-offs. They actually license the UK cover. So they're sort of a bit samey.
Put your dagger back in the background.
Sorry?
Put your dagger back in the background.
Oh, right, yes.
There you go.
So, yeah. So I think my favourite at the minute is the Spanish one. Now that's the one. Well, I'm pointing. I don't know why I pointed. Just above that ear. Oh, the other ear. This is. Yeah, so it's that one, the sort of yellowy one. I think that's my favourite at the minute. Although I do like the Japanese book, because it's tiny. It's only about 5 inches. It's about the size of one of the little beer cans. And you read it back to front and up and down rather than left to right. So it's quite a cool thing.
Sounds it. Kaz says hello. We've got lots of people. I'm starting this tonight. Might sneak it into the dog pen at work tomorrow, somebody says. Let's see if I can figure out who that is. Tony Millington says, the famed tea cozy hat from Four Blokes Looking for a Plot.
It's actually Joe and I like going on holiday to Madeira. It's a traditional Madeiran hat, which I just bought because I thought it looked silly. And it's quite comfy. And we were just saying before we came on there, weren't we? The reasons I ended up wearing a hat was to hide an injury, and it's become a bit of a thing now. I'm gonna break the chain, to quote Boris. Tonight's the night I don't wear a hat.
Don't quote Boris.
I'm never going to say, well, Chris Whitty then, because Chris Whitty's quite cool, isn't he? So yeah.
Breaking the chain and not wearing the hat. I will find out who that is. At the moment, I can't. All I can focus on is Lucy's put. I want to see Mike model this banana hat a la Freddie Mercury, and it is literally Freddie Mercury stroking a bunch of bananas on his head.
Well, that sounds very silly. I won't be doing that.
Won't put it past you. Joe's still waiting for his book, but it'll be there soon, Joe. Don't worry, we're all getting our deliveries. What do you have against Timothy Dalton's Bond, Mike? Says Lucy.
I had to kill one of the Bonds because that was just how the opening scene goes. One of the Bonds gets killed, and that's because they don't actually steal anything from the bank. They are there to kill somebody, to leave a body, so they're actually making a deposit. So I had to pick one, and it was either him or Pierce Brosnan. I think they're my least favourite Bonds. And there's a scene later in the book where Melody Lee, the FBI agent who's working with them, when Poe's saying and they killed Timothy Dalton, she goes, "Damn, he was my favourite Bond," and sort of Poe looks at him and goes, "Weirdo." But it's surprising. I mean, when that was sort of out there, people were actually saying that Timothy Dalton is their favourite Bond. So
I don't think I've ever sat through a full one.
A Bond film or a Timothy Dalton film?
Bond film.
All right. Well, there you go. I mean, I know someone who hasn't seen Star Wars. And it amazes me.
I've seen some of them. So, Kaz says, absolutely love that moment when he's dragged out of court. The bit where him and Tilly talk D&D as well, absolutely ace. She is a massive fan. Dungeons and Dragons is our Kaz.
Oh, right, yes. Yeah, that was the scene that I kept on getting cut, that scene, actually. So eventually it did make it into the Dead Ground. I think originally it was in the curator, but it got cut on I think there was just too many. It was a word count thing. So, but I wanted it in this one because it's been written for a few years, that scene.
And I don't think it's a spoiler to talk about the beginning. I didn't know who those two people were walking into that court. I had all sorts flying around my head.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean they're MI5 agents. I mean that's not a spoiler because it's revealed fairly early on.
Yeah.
And the back cover sort of alludes to it anyway. And they get dragged to the Manchester field office, which and I do mention this. The it's supposed to be a secret location, as in that just not advertised, rather than sort of one like you have to drive through a waterfall like Batman did. But the company who built it actually put it on their website for a few weeks because they didn't know. So they said we built the new MI5 thing and they put the address on and everything. So everybody knows where it is now. It's on the industrial estate, and you can actually find it on Google Earth. You're not really supposed to, and it's not actually got any sort of notifications. It doesn't actually say what it is, but if you know what you're looking for, you can see it. But I made up what the inside of the building looks like and the security process for getting inside and all that. I just completely made it up, but that was actually quite fun, just to imagine what it might look like.
Now, as you know, I did read the books out of order because Dead Ground was my first one, and so that was my introduction to Poe. That scene where he wants to take his phone.
Yes.
Right at the and again, it's right at the beginning, and anyone who's been reading them knows what Poe's like anyway.
Yeah, he. I think he instinctively knows that he's going to be asked to work with them, and he wants to stamp his sort of autonomy on very early. Plus, he doesn't like being told what to do, so he refuses to hand his because they put Tilly's phone in a Faraday pouch, one of those pouches that it has
and
no
all of
electronic signals won't get through.
Mm.
And then they have a little bit of a discussion, and Poe gets a bit silly, and there's a thing about the magic faraway tree and all that type of stuff. But then Poe refuses to, and then it's not until, and that scene eventually introduces Alistair Locke, who was the big spy boss. Who I thought it was a fun character to write, actually. And he sort of chastises the person trying to force Poe into handing his phone over, basically saying, "You were warned not to push him. You were asked to tell him why he was there," because at that point Poe doesn't even know why he's there yet. But because spies are sort of natural in my universe anyway, they are naturally secretive and they don't like giving information out even when they're supposed to. So he chastises this spook who's actually fetched Poe from Cumbria, and then he says to Poe, because he just put your phone in the damn bag, Poe, and then Poe does. But yeah, so I mean, all those scenes were actually quite fun because it sort of sets a marker for people who are new to this series. Well, okay, this is what Poe's like. He's quite anti-authority. He's not going to be pushed around. He doesn't care who's telling him what to do. Something he doesn't think it's right. But it's also a nod to readers of the series anyway, because they'll know before it happens that Poe isn't going to like being told what to do, so they can enjoy it sort of the way, and they can enjoy Tilly sort of getting anxious because she doesn't know how much trouble Poe's going to get himself into. All this, because he frequently sort of does things that are against his own interests.
Yeah. That's mild. Before, when I said I didn't know who it was Chris McDonald. Hi, Chris.
Hey, Chris.
He's been chastised. He's granted permission now, so I can see his name. Julie Anderson. Hi, Julie. Says Poe goes international. So Poe goes international and secret state. FBI MI5. She hasn't read it yet. You need to read it, Julie.
Yeah, and like they're not spoilers. That happens fairly early on, and the reason it's Poe is because Melody Lee, who was the FBI agent, and also the name of a damned song, in case someone's interested, that's where I got that name from. She had worked she's the person who told Poe about the existence of the Creator, the possibility of the existence of the Creator. So she knows that Poe isn't going to be cowed by, but because there's an international trade summit happening in Cumbria, and there's pressure on MI5 to get this murder cleared without any security implications, because they need the summit to go ahead. So Melody Lee insists that they use an independent investigator, one that they trust will actually find the truth rather than brush it under the carpet. So that's why Poe is actually called in at the start, and that's why he's given the authority to lead the team rather than be a part of the team. So he's actually leading the superintendent, the chief superintendent, whatever. I can't be able to tell you. She's either a chief superintendent or a superintendent in charge of the Cumbrian cops. So Poe's actually got authority over her, which is a bit awkward because he actually has a lot of respect for Jill Nightingale.
And he constantly calls her ma'am. You know, she likes him.
She does because she's one of the
really well.
She is one of the few cops that he has a lot of time for. The other's Steph Flynn. I mean, she has a minor role in this because of the events that happened in the Creator. But I mean, Poe's the type of guy. If he respects you, or he will give you the respect you deserve. So I mean, he's not an arsehole to everyone, just most people.
I don't think he comes across like that. I think I can't say that word on camera, not live. I'm surprised I've not read them sooner. And you know that I read for the interviews.
Yeah.
They have quite a lot, so I always make sure that I've read for them. But I'm not going to be able to not pick up every single bloody thing now.
Well, that's good. I'm doing my job then, aren't I?
Yeah.
But it's a funny thing because I'm not particular. I mean, Joanne is a fast reader, my wife, and she will get through like twice the number of books I'll get through. And I'll get through between maybe 70 or 80 books a year on a good year. And some of that reading is taken up by my editor will send me things because they want quotes, and my agent will do the same. authors who are friends, like Chris MacDonald.
Yeah.
I'll read his stuff. Wasim Khan, I always read his stuff. Abir Mukherjee, Imran Mahmood, Graham Smith, or John Ryder, whatever he's called himself tonight. I'll read his stuff if he asks me to. He doesn't often ask me to, so I don't know what to say, Graham. So that takes up another chunk of right. So the actual number of books I can read for my own enjoyment isn't that big. So there's quite a few authors that I haven't read, or if I've read, I've only read one of their books. And because my personal tastes run to the American crime fiction rather than the UK police procedurals, there are a few authors that I just haven't read at all. And I sometimes feel a bit embarrassed when particularly on the UK Crime Book Club, when they say, "Have you read this? Have you read that? Have you read J.D. Kirk? Have you read all the other authors that get Tony Kent? Some of these authors that get mentioned?" And I haven't, and it's not because I don't want to. It's just because I just physically don't have the reading time. I might have now if I do what David says, my agent, and take 2 years off. But who wants 2 years off? I mean, it just sounds awful.
It does sound awful. It really does. 2 years.
I mean, the reality is, Sam, when I was a probation officer, my hobby was writing, because I wasn't a published author at that point. So when I had time off, I would write. And now I've got time off, my instinct is to write, and therefore I'm not actually having time off. It's well, it's a nice position to be in, isn't it? But
it is. I took a year off to write, and then found a book club, and didn't write the book, but did write some short stories. We're in a book together. I mean, that's a bit.
We are, yes. I very much enjoyed your short story.
Thank you. I enjoyed yours.
Thank you. Mine was good. I wrote mine for a Stephen King competition. It was a horror story. I've got no track record of horror stories at all. In fact, it was my very, very first one. I've actually just written another one for an anthology that Paul Finch is doing. And I've just realised I told Paul Finch that story was the first horror story I've written, but actually it wasn't, because Disgrace was the first horror story. So it's not my usual thing, and it's not something I would. And I used to read when I was younger, the James Herbert and the Amityville Horrors, and I was a big horror reader when I was younger, but I don't read horror at all now, other than Stephen King.
I was point horror. I'm a big old wuss. And there's a lot of dark things go on in your books. When I was reading the opening of The Puppet Show, that's quite an eye-opening scene.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually quite funny, that, because and I might share it with the group one day, but that wasn't the opening chapter at all. For those who are old enough to remember the Two Ronnies, there was a bit of the Two Ronnies where Ronnie Corbett would start telling a joke to camera as part of a monologue. Then he would get distracted, and this thing would take about 10 minutes to tell like a 1 minute joke. So the puppet show originally started with two guys in an ice gritter traveling to Hardendale salt store, where that mummified body is eventually found later in the book, to collect some salt to grit the roads. But the opening line of the book is the opening line of a joke. And I thought, if you read the opening line of a joke, my sort of logic was, you're going to read till the end of the first chapter to find the punchline. And it was about 10, 12 pages long of these two guys, and one was explaining the joke to the other, who didn't get it at all. He was far too literal. He was asking loads of questions. It was about Native Americans, and he was saying what tribe, and they were collecting firewood. Well, where they're going to get the firewood from, because that tribe, they live on the plains. There's no firewood. It was one of those weird conversations. And eventually they get to the thing, and while they're still telling the joke, they find the body. And the fat guy actually has a heart attack. But my agent said it's not, because it's a crime book set in Cumbria, but the first thing you talk about is Native Americans. So he just said, just scrap that. You don't need it. Just burn someone to death on the very first page. So
you did.
Yeah.
Quite an introduction. It's quite memorable.
It is, and I mean it's graphic because it's from the point of view of the person being burnt alive, which isn't pleasant. But then it goes back into, in all my books, if you notice, they're all told through Poe's point of view. You discover what's happening when Poe discovers what's happening. So you don't have any information that Poe doesn't have. So you can try and solve it with Poe, and some people do, which is quite fun, quite good fun when people say, "Oh, I worked out who the killer was," and in varying degrees of success. I reckon about 15% of people work out who the killer was in the puppet show, depending on how much crime you read. I suspect. Dead Grounds, yeah, you might guess part of it.
I guess, yeah, part of it, not the whole thing.
Yeah, the creator's the same. You might guess part of it, but you're not going to guess all of it. Black Summer, nobody gets Black Summer. They're certainly not going to guess the actual genesis behind it. So it's various things. And the Botanist, is it the next year's Botanist? Which you can actually pre-order now, which is how mental is that? That's my first.
When is it actually out, Botanist?
June the 2nd next year.
Right. Okay.
So, and that's my first, what I would call out and out serial killer book. The events of the puppet show, technically it's a serial killer book, but the motivations are quite murky, and I think a lot of people feel sympathy for the killer in the puppet show, whereas in the Botanist he's just an out and out bad guy. So there's no grey areas with him. He's just an out and out killer, and he's doing it for his ego, which is.
Was that fun to write?
It was. I try and set myself a challenge each book. So this one, I wanted to do something to do with my background. I've been wanting to write this book for a while. Black Summer, I wanted to give Tilly a problem that she couldn't solve, which was how can someone be both dead and alive at the same time. And for the Botanist, I wanted to write a locked room mystery. So because the Botanist actually warns his victims, "You're next," and then whatever precautions they take, he manages to kill them, including putting a ring of police outside the door and things like that. So it was very much how's he managing to do this.
I'm looking forward to that.
In the Mercy Chair, I wanted to do a sort of. I want to write one of those books when you think you get to the end, you think, "I'm going to have to read this again now," because everything I thought was happening isn't happening. It's been something else has been happening. I want to write one of those books, like Shutter Island or Black Widow by Chris Brookmeyer. What you thought was happening isn't happening.
Isn't at all.
Yeah.
I do like being confused by things. I really do. Joe says you must do a lot of research and have a little black book of experts. But if there was a facility, what specialist expert would you like to speak with? So is there anyone that you haven't been able to that you think could be top of your list?
I suspect if I have access to a lot more people now because they'll approach me. So for the Botanist, for example, there was a quite an eminent scientist actually wanted to read it, and he went through it for me. And Graham Bartlett reads my stuff now. I know he's a UK Crime Book Club favourite, isn't
he? He is.
I've never been asked that, to be honest.
It's one of Joe's
actually for the Mercy Chair, there's a lot of religious stuff in it. It's about a cult, a religious cult. And I mean, this isn't a spoiler. I mean, this is it's one of those first page things. I haven't managed to speak to anyone in that area, but my agent has a degree in theology, so I'll be sending it to him soon. So he will be able to say, well, you've got that wrong, or you need to tone this down a bit, or something like that. He normally tells me something.
David Headley.
Yes, Headley.
So how did you meet David? How did that come about? What came first, the agent or the book?
I attended a crime writing conference in Gretna in 2014, and called Crime and Publishment, which I absolutely recommend. It's still running. And one of the things that Graham Smith, who runs it, does, he has a publisher going one year about how to pitch to a publisher, what the publishers want. The next year, he has an agent doing the sort of same thing. And then on the last day and on Sunday morning, there's a pitch a publisher or pitch an agent, depending which year it is. So on the pitch the pitch the publisher, I pitched, and I got a contract from Caffeine Nights. And the following year, when David was there, I actually had my first. Well, it was Born in the Burial Ground. Actually, it was Assume Nothing, but I mean the short story collection that preceded it. So I gave it to David, and he actually approached me and he said, "Next time you've got something that you've written something, then please let me have a look first. So that's how I met David. And he initially didn't sign me up. So he sent me an email saying, "I'm sorry, I can't take you on because you're with an independent thing and your sales haven't been particularly good. So I can't sell this, which is Body Breaker. I can't sell this book because it's the second one in a series that hasn't set the world afire." So he said, "But if you want to ring me, please do." So I did anyway, because common courtesy. Normally I wouldn't, but for some reason I just did. And he sort of talked himself into it. I wasn't trying to persuade him, saying, "Oh, you change your mind." And we agreed that I would rewrite Body Breaker as the first of the new series. And then he signed me on that basis. But when it came down to it, it was just going to be too much hassle. And I said it would be easier if I write what was originally going to be the third book in the Fluke series. If I write that as the first in a new book. So the plot of Puppet Show was originally going to be the third book in the Fluke series. And I'd set up characters from the start, from the short stories that preceded Barilgan, actually. I'd set them up to take up key roles. The Fluke was going to be Poe. Poe. Yeah, that's right. And a few others were going to be sort of key members of the Puppet Show. So I ended up signing with David, and I wrote the Puppet Show very quickly, actually, because I'd already had the idea. I knew exactly what was happening. And he sold it to Little Brown in the start of 2017. I went down to London, met with my now agent, and she signed me. Actually, she'd already made up her mind to try and sign me, although she doesn't have has to go to an acquisitions meeting. But in the lift on the way up to where the meeting was, she goes, "I love the changes you made," because she had 2 pages worth of notes to David saying, if we were to take him on, this is what we would need to happen. So I said to David, "I'll just wait till the meeting, then make those changes." And he said, "If you don't mind working over Christmas and make those changes before the meeting, you can actually show that you're somebody who you can work with." So I did that, and it took a while, but it was fine. So some of the changes she wanted in the Puppet Show, if you remember in the Puppet Show, there's an exhumation scene where the council come and they set up all the PPE and they get the body out the ground. In the original version, Poe just went there in the middle of the night with a shovel. And she said, "Well, no, we'll just do that properly. It doesn't make any difference."
Do it properly.
So, like, Tilly, original name was Tilly Dowbacon, and it wasn't Bradshaw. So there was a few things like that, some big things, some small things. So in the lift going up, she said, "I love the changes that you've made. So I'm going to recommend we buy it." So half of me was saying, "Well, I needn't have bothered coming down from Cumbria then," but I didn't. I was on my best behaviour. And then we sat down in this sort of this rooftop thing at Carmelite House on the bank of the Thames, and she says, "We hate the title, and we don't like your name." So I was like, "Oh, grand." And it wasn't so much they didn't like my name; it was just I'd previously been published as Mike. She said, "Have you got a middle name, W? Right, we'll just publish you as MW Craven now." And so if anyone wants to know why they're using my initials rather than my name, it's because I was previously published under Mike. It's not a vanity thing. It's not a gender neutral thing. It's purely just I was previously published under Mike. And then the actual name, because I called it Welcome to the Puppet Show. And she said, "Right, come back in about a month. Take as long as you need, and then come back with a bunch of titles that say crime and also say rural Cumbria." So, I mean, honestly, the trouble we had, I asked the writing group I'm in, I asked all my friends, I asked journalists, and I came up with a big list of like Dark Waters and Black Fells and things like that. And one fellow called Les Morris, LG Morris, he's an author now, just got a publishing deal, so congratulations. He said, "Why don't you call it the Cumberland Sausage Murders?" Well, I told him to go away. But eventually, I was just about ready to send my list, and Christina, my editor, said, "I was out with David last night, and we've agreed just to call it the Puppet Show. Sales really like it, and it'll play well abroad because they had the rights to the UK language, the English language, apart from the States and Canada. So they weren't just thinking of the UK audience; they're thinking of Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa, and a few places. So that's why it's called the Puppet Show, even though it wasn't supposed to be called the Puppet Show.
One of the things that I mean, I laughed all the way through. You've constantly got your reader thinking and laughing. They're always laughing at whatever's coming out of Paul's mouth. But he's got a really good instinct for people, which must mean that you've got a really good instinct for people.
I think so. I mean, I was a probation officer for 16 years, and you can't do that if you can't read people to a certain degree.
Yeah.
And also because I sort of started out as a probation officer when I was interviewing a wide variety of people who third generation unemployed, living in absolute poverty, all the way up to people who have defrauded businesses and doing that, and anyone in between, murderers, rapists who had then killed the victim, that type of thing. Some horrific people.
Yeah.
And what a lot of people don't realise is that probation officers, more than any other profession, have more face-to-face contact with offenders than any other profession. More than the police, more than prison officers, because their job is on a day-to-day basis to talk to offenders, try and find out why they did what they did, and then to try and find a way to stop them doing it again. So there's that. But as I worked my way through the system, I became more and more senior until eventually I was managing Cumbria. And I was attending like the senior meetings so I was like the probation rep for all the adult safeguarding meetings and the child protection, the children's safeguarding board and the terrorism boards and all these other things. So I got to speak to. So I used to have meetings with the chief constable and the PCC and all that type of stuff. So I got to speak to a whole range of people, which was quite interesting. But I sort of never lost that. I don't know, the ability just to sum someone up quite quickly.
Yeah.
And just say, right, yeah, your heart isn't in this job. You're just paying lip service to this, or if an offender, yeah, you don't think you've done anything wrong, or you've got no intention of changing.
Yeah.
Sex offenders, particularly, I mean, they were always challenging to work with, and you could suss them out pretty quickly whether they were generally contrite and remorseful, and whether they felt empathy towards the victims or whether they were just paying lip service because they had certain requirements as part of their court order, as part of their license, that type of thing. So yeah, then I would act accordingly. But I mean, by the time I was in that, it was particularly when people are on license, and if they breach part of their license, and it could be going into a certain area or drinking alcohol or using a computer, then they could be sent back to prison, and it was my decision whether someone went back to prison to finish their sentence in prison. So I mean, that was quite a big responsibility, and it meant you did have to, and ultimately had to rely on the probation officers, and because they would go through their managers, and then they would eventually get to me. So you'd have to read your probation officers as well, and so actually, are you just telling me what you think I want to hear, or have you been pressurized by the police? Because the police are always wanting them back in prison because off the streets. So you're not just, it wasn't just the people we were working with. It was my colleagues as well.
So writing the things that you write, obviously quite deep and dark, and there's a lot of emotion attached to it. Is there a form of catharsis?
No.
No. Not working anything off. Not.
No. I got asked this question a while ago, actually, and my answer was, if I wasn't doing this, I wouldn't be out there torturing pigeons.
No, of course not.
Because it's just what I do. I enjoy doing it, but I'm not really working through anything apart from burial gown, actually, because I gave Fluke a very bad form of cancer called Burkitt's lymphoma, and he spent. He had a massive operation, and then he spent 6 months as an inpatient in the RVI in Newcastle, and he had loads of side effects. And that was exactly my experience. That's what happened to me in 2003 over in 2004. So that was a bit cathartic. But other than that, I just write what I would like to read to a certain degree.
Fair enough. Okay, I've got a question.
Okay.
And I wrote this down, and I've changed it from the exact phrase that you wrote. So somebody is off their, I'm going to go with face, on wobbly eggs.
Off the tits and wobbly eggs. I'm just going to say it. Yeah. That
You don't work in a primary school. You can say it.
Yeah, that was. I'm assuming you want to know what that is. I mean, yeah.
I've learned from editing something not to Google things, because when something's not quite the right word, you get the Urban Dictionary version.
Right. Okay.
So I wasn't Googling. I just thought I'd ask you.
No, it's benzos.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, no, benzodiazepam. That's just what they get called up here, wobbly eggs.
Never heard that phrase.
And that's just, I mean, that's a Cumbrian. I didn't know it was a Cumbrian thing until I just assumed. I thought it could have been potentially a northern thing, but no, wobbly eggs are benzo.
It could well be. It's just one that slipped by me. Evidently, I have no.
I remember writing that, but I've got no idea what book it was in. Quite frankly,
Dead Ground.
Was it?
Yeah.
All right. Who says that?
Because I didn't write down who said it. Is it? I don't know. I didn't write down who said it. I just stuck this out of the side of the book so I wouldn't forget.
It's okay.
I should have written down the page number. I could have had a look. I knew I was going to.
You say when this gets back to having to submit it 18 months in advance, so I haven't read this properly since, well, for at least 2 years. So people who've just read it, who are reading it now, know the book far better than I do.
Yeah, most authors say that to us. Somebody said 2023, you are knowing my bad books, and a laughy face. But it's Facebook users, so I don't know. I've not had to pick my phone up.
The next Poe book's out in 2022. Less than a year now, because it's out June the 2nd.
Yeah.
But at present, there'll be a gap. That's when the year after the standalone's being published. So at present, and this is subject to change, we're having a proper discussion next week, probably, when the fuss about Dead Ground has started to subside, because everyone's very busy. Because not just me, I mean, my publicist and my editor, they're all busy. We'll have a discussion about the scheduling, but at present, the next Poe book after the bottom of this won't be out until 2024, so there'll be a gap of 2 years between Poes after the next one.
How are you feeling about a standalone coming and then carrying on the series afterwards? But standalone's a new thing now.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote this years ago. I mean, 7 years ago. So it needs updating, and I've got the edits through now. I haven't read them yet. And the next book I write will be a standalone as well, because that's what my agent wants. But that's for some time in the future, and then I'll go back to the Poe series, because that's what I like to do. But I was just talking about this the other night with someone. I mean, I've now, the last 6 books I've written have all been Poe books, and it can be a bit like you're writing an infinite story, just like a never-ending thing. You write the end one day, you work on the edits for a bit, then you write the start a few days later. So it can feel a sort of bit never-ending. So, and I was talking to Mark Billingham. I did a podcast with him last week or the week before, maybe, and he said you've got to have, because and the subject was series, and he was saying, because he's now, I think he's on book 17 or 18. He said you've got to write standalone every now and then, just for your own sanity. And it's not because the series isn't doing very well, because the Poe series is doing exceptionally well, far better than we could have envisaged. But just for my own mental, I mean, it's not as if I'm going to crack up and suddenly start torturing said pigeons. If I had to keep on writing Poe, but it might lose its edge, or it might stop being as much fun as it is. And obviously, everyone would want to avoid that, because the books also. Yeah.
Mike Hemming says hello. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Mike.
Steve Munoz over in, I've never once asked Steve if I'm pronouncing his surname properly, but he's over in California. So hi, Steve.
Hi, Steve.
We've got loads of Tony says the banana head is from Queen's video I'm Going Slightly Mad. I do remember seeing it. I couldn't place where it was from. So I'm not.
I've been listening to a lot of Queen, actually, because Joe and I watched the Bohemian Rhapsody thing with Rami Malek. Is it Rami Malek? Yeah, and I mean, although they sort of downplayed certain parts of Freddie Mercury's life, but I thought it was a very enjoyable film. So I've been listening to a lot of Queen recently. So I've been listening to. I'm going slightly mad. I don't remember the video actually, so I'll check that out tonight and have a look. But I'm not wearing a banana hat.
We watched. I thought my husband was there, but he's not there. One of the concerts from. Oh, it might be in the 80s. A few weeks ago, absolutely fantastic. Loads of different people. It was the AIDS concert.
Yeah, I did. Because that was the end of that was how the film ended with the in fact no, it was the Live Aid, not the AIDS concert. It was Live Aid, wasn't it? It was for
Live Aid, yeah.
And they stole the show, didn't they? I mean, it was because they were just sort of wedged in between them. They were quite a last.
No, the one I'm talking about was the tribute one. The
right, the one with Axl Rose,
Lisa Stansfield and Axl Rose, and
I watched that. That was quite good because Metallica were on and Roses, and it was it was good.
It was really good. I keep forgetting that there's people. Anya says Daniel Craig is the most handsome Bond.
Oh, all right, fair enough.
So Andrew, who's one of our members who lives in Nottingham, says hello and he hopes you're okay.
Thank you, Andrew. Yes, I'm fine, thank you.
I believe there is now a Mike Craven coach tour going around Cumbria, says Joe. At some point, will you be going to meet the busload? Now, there's something I didn't know.
That was so funny. This guy called Peter, he runs a tour company in London, got in touch to say, I want to run a Poe and Tilly tour. Can I come up to Cumbria and meet you? Then I'll go around what I think I want to do on the tour. And he did. He spent a week. He's this German fella, and he's a mad punk fan as well. So we ended up talking about we met in Cakes and Ale, the same place that Poe goes to in Dead Ground, and we talked about punk for an hour. And then he developed this tour. And so you go to the Stone Circles, you go to the Shackwell's Hotel, and a few other places in the books. And he's this lovely man. But Joanne was saying before I went, said don't agree to anything because otherwise you're going to be meeting people off the train at the station handing out packets of sweets. Oh yeah, but no, I won't be meeting anyone off the tour.
Lucy said she's having a drink for me, so I'm on Prosecco tonight, non-alcoholic. Letting Manchester down, but you're on the Brewdog, so you're keeping the side up, so we're fine.
Yes.
Kaz is saying that you can't always read things that aren't on our author chat lineup, which we can't. We've just been talking about the same thing, and she's just agreeing that if it's not in your schedule, you can't just pick up a book and read it. I've got at the side of me, where is it? By Mitch Albom. I loved The 5 People You Meet in Heaven, one of my favourite books. And there's a sequel to it called The Next People You Meet in Heaven. It's still on the shelf. I've not had a chance to read it yet, but I will. I'll make time at some point.
I've got books that I'm desperate to read, like the I forgot what it's called. Anya's read it. I know she has. It's the sequel. Well, it's not a sequel, but it's the second book written by the author of The Night Circus. I've got this beautiful signed edition with not sprayed edges, but like sort of pictures on the sort of edges. So I haven't read it yet. Still haven't managed to find the time. I've got the new John Grisham Sully to read, which I'm quite keen to read. But I'm reading one for someone else at the minute, and I'm reading The Forevers by Chris Whitaker. He's got a YA book coming out in July, and then I'm doing an event with Amit Dand in Bradford on the 25th. So I've got his standalone to read. So that's my reading for the next. Probably, and I'm reading I'm reading some Terry Pratchett's on the Kindle as well, just because I tend to read Terry Pratchett's all the time because he's probably my favourite author.
Joe wants to know if you're going to Harrogate.
I don't know yet.
I think it's too soon for a lot of people to call, isn't it?
I mean, it's not so much. I don't know how it's going to be formatted. The way if all restrictions are relaxed on the 21st, then and Harrogate goes ahead as it always does, then yeah, we'll be there. We've had a hotel booked for a couple of years now because we're able to bring it forward. And Joanne's got her over ticket, so I'll be there in some form, I would imagine. But I'm hoping that it gets that it can go ahead as it always does with like a beer tent rather than table service and things like that. Because Harrogate is just so much fun. It really is.
I was supposed to go during my year off, and then lockdown happened, so I've still never been yet.
Oh, you've got to say it's just so much fun, and you'll see so many authors that you've been idolising for years. And
you think I'm giddy, kind of sat here now in person. You'll be glad that I'll be on the Niseko, not the Niseko. This one's it's not great. This one, the Marks and Sparks one's nice.
You'll never see so many drunk people at the same place. It's absolutely hilarious. I mean, they did like a not at the bar. I think they've been there 3 years now, and because the Harrogate opening ceremony is 8 o'clock at night on the Thursday, they had to have it in the afternoon. So we would pile into this bar for not at the bar. About 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you have about like 6 or 7 pints. And you go back to the beer tents. By the time it comes to 8 o'clock for the open ceremony, everyone's absolutely slaughtered. It's absolutely hilarious.
3 Mark Billingham's on the stage.
Well, it's just, I mean, because you sort of seeing people you haven't seen for a year in some, because Harrogate tends to be the one that everyone goes to. Crime Fest, yeah, a lot of people go to Crime Fest, and Bloody Scotland, yeah, a lot of people go to Bloody Scotland, but everyone tends to go to Harrogate. So it's just a lot of fun. It really is, and it's a chance to just have a drink with anyone. I mean, and you meet a lot of readers as well, because it's a very reader friendly festival. But you also get to see your pals as well.
You're very reader friendly. I've just spotted Michael John Sims asking if he can have your mug because he loves it, which reminded me of one of my questions.
It depends. If he asks me, no. If he asks Joanne, he'll say yes. You can. I'll drive it over myself. She absolutely hates it. Absolutely hates this mug. She wasn't there when I went. We bought it at the Metro Centre actually, and I said, "Guess where I've bought?" She's like, "What?" So I ain't made mum. She said, "Yeah, you're joking. Not coming out. Leave that in the car."
So, when you were writing, have you used anybody that you know in any books?
Yeah, all the time.
I'd be reading something and I go, "Oh."
I use the names of people, particularly in the botanist, because I did a thing on the UK Crime Book Club, as in who wants to be in the book, because I've got a weird memory, sort of imagination. I can imagine these awfully complex plots with quite dark things happening. But if I have to give the name of the postman who's just delivering a letter, I can do it in half an hour. I'll be like, David Postman. I just can't do it. So it was quite handy to actually just put on who wants to be in it, because then I just had a list of names to go through. It also backfired a bit because somebody who appeared early on also ended up being the killer at the same time. I'd used his name twice, and my beta readers spotted that, so I was able to change it. But I also and my copy editor told me off because he said that I'm not going to say the name, but said, do you not like this person or something? I said, why? That's the 3rd time you try to use them as the sort of the local arsehole, like the dickhead. I said, all right, I'll have to stop doing that. But yeah, names is, and I'll bring in characteristics of people every now and then. But certainly the next book, there's a lot of UK Crime Book Club members in the next one.
Should be interesting reading. We'll have to do people did Line of Duty bingo, like he says Mother of God and you have a drink.
Yeah.
We'll have to set up some sort of event for you where every time there's a UK CBC member, be worse than the tent at Harrogate. Mike just mentioned Paul Finch, and this is from Andrew. Paul's father Brian wrote for Heartbeat and lots more crime dramas. I did not know that.
I didn't. I mean, I know a little bit of Paul, and I'm good friends with Paul. I didn't know that, because I know Paul's done a lot of screenwriting and stuff before. I think he wrote for The Bill. Paul did. I think.
I don't know. I know we had Simon McLeave on a few weeks ago, and I know he wrote for The Bill.
Right.
So I was having a look and catch up.
Anyone who was a screenwriter wrote the bill because there was so many episodes, weren't there?
I've been rewatching them. They're really good. I've not watched any for a few weeks again now, though, because I've been too into everything else that I've been doing. Do you sit and watch things? Do you have favourite things that you watch?
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, Joe and I just watched Mare of Easttown, which pretty much blew me away. I mean, that's one of the best crime things I've ever seen. But one of the quirks of COVID actually was our internet has been appalling. I mean, for years we're on Sky, and it was just awful. And I've been promising to get the internet sorted. I mean, probably for 5 years, probably. And eventually, I bit the bullet, and I got BT fiber optic, and it's just like red hot. I mean, it's absolutely brilliant. So I thought, oh, I can now get Netflix, and I can get Amazon Prime, and I said to Joe, just press that button there. It just says agree to pay, and she was like, oh, all right. We've just got Disney here. So I've been going through all these things that a lot of people have been watching for years, like Stranger Things and Bosch, and we had someone had given us their Amazon code before we had the internet sorted. So we were trying to watch Bosch on our old internet, and we ended up calling it Fuzzy Face Bosch because it was always like just this awful internet connection. So we've been watching all things like that, and then so we will binge things that we like, and we've seen some cracking crime dramas. And we tend to watch the crime dramas, a lot of the Scandinavian stuff. But I would say the two best things I've seen recently were Mare of Easttown and the Mr. Mercedes adaptation, which is on Stars or something like that. But we had a free. I think we paid for it for a couple of months on through the Amazon thing because we weren't going to watch it. So I will, and I watched Line of Duty and stuff.
You ever watched The Five?
Unforgotten was the last thing I sort of watched. I mean, that was just astonishing. It was absolutely, it was absolutely brilliant. I mean, she's what an actor.
Nicola Walker's incredible. Yeah. The Five by Harlan Coben, I bought again a few weeks ago on Prime. Absolutely loved that.
Yeah, I mean, he's just had something out on Netflix, I think. A new thing, an adaptation of one of his books, which was great as well. Got really dark.
I've not seen it.
Yeah, that wasn't the one. That's all right. But the new adaptation, it's very new. It's probably only about 6 weeks old. And it's Spanish. I think it's Spanish.
No, I've not seen this one.
Or French. Yeah, look out for it. It's incredibly violent as well. I mean, because they can be a bit sanitized, the Harlan Coben adaptations sometimes, can't they? But this one was quite graphic, and it was excellent. It was really good.
Guess what? It's nearly 8 o'clock.
Blimey.
2 minutes left.
2 minutes.
So, shall we have a quick recap of Dead Ground so people know what to go and buy if they haven't read it already?
Yeah. Right, there it is. And this is the Waterstones edition. It's got a short story in the back called Mondo Bizarro, which is only available in the Waterstones edition. At some point, it might come out in a sort of a collection, but if it is, it won't be for a few years. And that takes place in a bookshop, and it's my nod to Agatha Christie. So yeah, it's a lot of fun, and it's probably the funniest book I've done. There's a lot of humorous dialogue in it, and and that was intentional. And it's not a dark book. Actually, I think it's probably the lightest book I've done. I mean,
I thought it was quite light. Yeah,
certainly compared to The Curator and The Puppet Show. Black Summer I thought was lighter than The Puppet Show, but then I thought The Curator was probably, when you get to the end, because it sort of draws you in. You think, oh, and wow.
Suddenly frozen on my screen, Mike, if you can hear me. Well, what a way to end.
Bone that was someone like a fracture. He was trying to get some information quickly, and he was trying to pull the bone out of someone's arm. Said no, just tone that a little bit down a bit. So this is it's the fourth book in the series. It's out now, available anywhere that sells books, and I think it's my favourite book in the series. Some people have agreed with me. Some people are saying the puppet show still is, or whatever, and that's absolutely fine. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. And my agent says it's a Tilly book, and there's a lot of Tilly.
There is a lot of Tiller.
He gets to say spastic colon in any book that has spastic colon in it, which sounds a horrible thing to have.
It really does, yeah.
It is a book worth reading, I think.
So without further ado, let's raise a non-alcoholic glass to you and Dead Ground. Congratulations.
Thank you, Sam, and thank you for hosting me. And thank you, everyone who's watching. It's been a lot of fun again.
And we haven't done the competition, so how do you want to go about it? Shall we?
I'll sort that out.
There are so many questions and comments that we didn't get to, so I think you won't
I'll probably try and work my way through them tomorrow, and I'll try and answer as many as I can. But the competition, I just did that because I've been sorting out my new office, which you can see in the background, and so I've got a big pile of sort of advanced copies of like the Puppet Show and Black Summer and the Creator that I just don't need anymore. So I was just going to give them away because they're just taking up space. So I might as well give them, and who better to give them away to?
Well, thank you very much, and thank you to all the admins and members and everybody who's checked in on me to make sure I wasn't too nervous. I don't think I did bad for a night without alcohol.
Well, it looks like alcohol. That's the main thing.
Doesn't taste like alcohol. Cheers, Mike.
Cheers, Sam. Thank you.